Welcome to the video training for pivot points. So in this video, we're going to be looking at pivot levels, what they are, how to use them, and how price moves in between them intraday. So first thing to understand about pivot levels is that they are a type of, you guessed it, support and resistance, right? That's kind of the key foundation for everything that we are doing intraday, is that we are playing in between support and resistance. Now, again, there are different types of support and resistance. There are horizontal support and resistance, diagonal support and resistance, and as you will soon learn, there are many different types of support and resistance. Now, pivot points are an indicator-based support and resistance, and I'm going to go ahead and pull them up here. So I'm going to go up here to indicators, and I'm going to type in right here in the search bar, pivot point, and then you guys are going to want to pick pivot points standard. Okay, you want the standard pivot points, and it's going to pull them up. And I already have mine with the settings that I normally use, but I'm going to go to format. So right click the pivot and click format. And here you're going to get to change a few different things about the pivots, right? So you can choose to show historical pivots or not to show historical pivots. So if you only want to show the pivot points for the current day, then you can click this box and it will unshow all of the historical pivot points, which I have on my screen right now. Okay, and then you can also choose how many days back you want the pivots to show. So if you want to look at the previous week, you can just change this to 7, right? Now for the pivot time frame, this is going to be very important. So you don't want to do weekly or monthly or yearly or anything like that. You want to do daily, and make sure the default setting is going to be auto. Make sure that you change it to daily, and make sure that you double check every time that you're trading that it says daily, because we are intraday trading, okay? So these have to be daily. And then you can come over here to the style, and you can change the color of everything, make the lines thicker or whatever, and do whatever you want to do there, just for style essentially. And then of course make sure that the type is traditional. You don't want any other of these weird styles on here. You just want traditional daily pivot points. Okay. Now, what are pivot points? Well, pivot points are an indicator that is based on a formula. Okay. Now, there are many different pivot point indicators, and it's going to depend on what platform you're using, what broker you're using. That's going to depend on what formula they use to calculate their pivot points. Now, the interesting thing about pivot points is that institutions, okay, and as you guys may or may not know, institutions are the entities that generally move the market, right? So I'm talking banks, both private and public, right? Hedge funds, the entities that move the market, they are moving money between pivot levels, okay? They have their own pivot points, which they calculate based on their own formulas, and then they move price intraday between these pivotal levels, right? So the idea is that if you can get a pivot point indicator that has a formula that is similar or close to the formulas that these major market players are using, then you will be able to trade with the big players and know where price is going and know where they're moving the market at all times intraday. Okay, so that is the power of these pivot points. Now, I want you to look at the pivot points generally as institutional support and resistance. Okay, so we have horizontal traditional support resistance, which is built into the market, which are inherent barriers in price. And then we have diagonal support and resistance, which is based on the fact that the market moves within channels. And then we have institutional support and resistance, which is based on the idea that intraday institutions are moving price between pivotal levels for their transactions, okay? The pivots are based on a calculation, traditionally, of the average daily range, so how much the market moved the day beforehand, how much the market is expected to move in the current day based on fundamental analysis such as news releases, as well as highs and lows, stuff like that, right? So there's a lot of different things that go into the calculation of where these pivot points are. Now, The cool thing about the pivot points is that they are not subjective, meaning that, you know, when you go and you are trading support and resistance and price channels and such, you're trading something that is subjective, meaning you have to build the skill to accurately mark, analyze, and trade those levels. But when it comes to pivots, all you have to do is put them on the chart and they're done for you. It takes out all the subjectivity. So it really helps to give you more of an objective bias in your trades to have these on here. And just to give you guys an idea of how this calculation is running each day, notice how on this day right here, right, so the beginning of this pivotal, which starts right here, is the beginning of the trading day, which is at 4 o'clock, okay, the start of the Australian and then soon Asian session, okay, and then comes all the way down to the end of the day, which is the end of the New York, start of the Australian session, right? So this is the day as it moves on, and then boom, a new day begins, and then this is the whole day here, and then another day, blah, 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 right? Continues on. So notice how this day, when we began at the beginning of the day, price moved all the way down. It was a very trendy day, a large movement in price, right? So the next day, the pivotals took this into account, and when the pivotals updated at 4 o'clock, notice how they were very far apart because there was so much volatility the day before. And then notice how this day, price stayed within a very small range, didn't really go anywhere. So then the next day, the pivotals were very close together, okay? So that just gives you an idea of how these formulas are working to consistently update to market conditions. And then, of course, understand that institutions are moving price in between these pivotal levels each day. So one of the things I want to talk to you guys real quick about is, you know, these pivot names. All right, so I'm going to zoom in here. Now, notice right here, let me get my circle here. We have our P, right? That is our pivotal level. So that is our central level, okay? That means price is going to open up somewhere in between P and R1 or P and S1. It's going to open up somewhere in this range, and then P is considered our kind of pivot, right? Our center for the day. Now, R1 stands for resistance 1, R2 resistance 2, right, etc. And then S1 support 1, S2 support 2, etc. Right? So again, support and resistance. These are institutional support and resistance levels. Now, what I want to do in this video, okay, is A, make sure you guys understand what pivot points are and how to accurately apply them to the charts, which we've already gone over, and then B, convince you guys that institutions are really moving the market in between these levels intraday when they're carrying out their transactions. So that's going to be what we do for the remainder of this video. We're going to go look at some examples, and we're just going to go through and look at how the price is moving each day between these levels. So let me go ahead and remove all of my drawing tools here. And we're just going to start, bring this in here, going to start, let me just throw up a vertical line right here, okay? So let me just zoom in. Okay, so the day opens up right in this region, okay? Now, you guys know how support and resistance works, hopefully, by now. So notice how price opened up over here, came down, bounced up off of this pivot level, and then we had a big candle breakthrough. We came up for a retest, it held at resistance, and then price came down. Where did price come down to? Price came down to our next pivot level, right here, S1. So it came down to support 1. Notice how price acted at support 1. It bounced up, and then bounced up, and then big candle to break through. It looked green candle as a retest. Retested again. It's holding now as resistance. And then I can bring this across. You guys can see, boom, we held at resistance again right here at this magic pivotal level, right? And then, boom, we saw that price came down to our next pivotal level, S2. All right, that's what we expected, right? These institutions, the guys who move the market, move the price, are moving price between pivotal levels intraday, right? So that's what we would expect. Now, price comes down. It bounces at support 2, at S2. Bounces up, comes down, bounces up again, breaks through. Big candle to break through. Look, green candle showing rejection here, retest. holding at resistance. We're trying to come back. We can't break through it. We start to fall. Where do we fall to? We fall all the way to S3. That is what we would expect, right? And then zooming in, you guys can see, look, price broke through, big candle again, retest, holding, at this magical just pivot that's just sitting out here in the middle of nowhere, right? Obviously, there's more to it than that. And then boom, comes down. Guys, look, big candle broke through, green candle retest. Where do we go? Down here. Now, we didn't quite make it to S5 by the end of the day, but notice we will hit S5 before we continue on, right? So amazing how that worked that day. Now, next day, take a look at this day. Okay, this day worked a little bit different. We had our pivotal level up here, and we had our S1 down here. Now, the reason why price didn't make it to either one of these pivot levels is because clearly the market didn't have enough volatility to go anywhere. So this is a day when there's not much liquidity or volatility in the market, and therefore the institutions don't have enough power to push this to P or S1. You guys will get better at identifying how to trade situations like this and how to predict, I should say, when these situations are going to come. So on a day like this, when price flew down that much, you can expect when the pivots are this far apart the next day that you might have an issue reaching one of the pivotal levels. Okay, so that's something you guys will get used to. But let's just continue on and look how price interacts between pivotals. So we open up right here at pivotal level, and then notice how we breach, we retest, we fly up to R1, we bounce, we break, and then we actually got a little muddy right here. And the reason why is because price didn't have enough volatility at the time to continue to the downside. So we moved up. Also, it's important to understand, and we're going to talk about this in a later video when we sum everything together, but this right here is a significant support and resistance level, which is why this essentially happened. It didn't have the volatility to break this major key support and resistance. So we will come back to that later. Just understand right now that's what's going on. So look, when we do breach through this again, notice how we come up magically to our R2, and then from R2 we come down to R1, and then R2, and then R1, and then R2, and then we go into our next day. Guys, look where price went the next day. La da 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 da, boom, went to R1 and then flew down. Notice how, look guys, notice how big candle breached through P, right? Through our pivotal, and then it held at resistance the entire time, and then flew down to S1, which we would expect, and then came down here to S2, and we didn't have enough volatility to quite make it down here to S3. But the reason why we didn't make it is because you guys see this giant green candle right here? This is a news event. So we will talk more about news events when we pull everything together. So there's a reason why the few times that it doesn't make it to these levels like we would expect, there's always a reason why. And we will get to that in later videos. But notice how after the news hit, all that volatility came flying up, flying up. Look what happened. Pinpoint. We came up to this pivot and then dropped. Okay? It's like magic. And then you guys can see how price just keeps bouncing, bouncing, bouncing on this pivotal level. Next day, look at this, guys. Look at this. Pivot, holding at resistance, holding at resistance. Okay? Didn't have enough volatility to breach this support down here. And then we moved on. And again, this is one of those days when price is just moving sideways most of the day. We didn't really get anywhere. There's not enough volatility to make it anywhere. But when we finally did find volatility during the New York session at the end of the day, look what happened. Price went where? Went to R1, as we would expect. Okay, and we can continue doing this, guys, for all the pairs. It just, look, guys, it's just moving in between pivotal levels each day. You go ahead and zoom out and look at a couple more examples over here. I mean, look at this, guys. Look, there was no reason, right? You would not have had this area marked as important, right? Price came all the way down here to pivotal level, held its support, and then flew up all the way to R2, where it then stopped for the day. Okay, so, I mean, it's really brilliant. I mean, look at this, guys. Support, support, support. Comes up, pinpoint to the R1, flies down. Look at this. Look where it goes, guys. Down here to S2. and just stops for no reason, just out here in the middle of nowhere, right? But as you guys know, there is a reason. Institutions are moving price in between these pivot points each day. So these are institutional support and resistance levels. So I encourage you guys, I really encourage you guys to go into your charts, put on the pivot indicator with the correct settings that we've discussed, and I want you to go through each day and look at how price is moving, okay? And once you can appreciate that price is just moving in between these institutional pivot levels each day, you will begin to have an appreciation for the strategy that you guys are about to be taught, okay? So hope you guys got the value that you needed from this video, and I will see you guys next time.